Alright, I think we can start. So let me share my screen. 1 second. Alright, if you guys can see my screen, just say yeah in the chat. Alright, just make sure you can see it. Alright, so today we're going to be talking about data types and variables. So, alright. Here's a little introduction. I was monitoring the chat last time, so this time I'll be taking the class over. So my name is Rohith. I am a sophomore at Georgia Tech. My major is industrial engineering, and when I went to Tech, I had no coding knowledge throughout high school. I never took any coding classes, but at Georgia Tech, coding is required. You're mandatory to take at least one. And when I took it, I really enjoyed it, and I continued it, took multiple classes, and yeah, here I am, just want to teach you guys a little bit, and there you go. Alright, so a review from last time, we mostly went over just what Python is as a whole, and we went over like print and input statements. So before we start, again, go to replit.com. We went to the same site last time. I'll put the link in the chat again. So yeah, there's the link. Just reply yeah when you're in the site. Alright, couple people. Yep. So yeah, so we went over print and input statements. So basically, also make sure to create a new one if you haven't. So just to create, let me just, right here, there's a create button. You click create, and then Python. You can use the same one that you used last time as well. But if you would like to create a new one and, maybe title it like lecture 2 or something like that, you can do whatever you want. And yeah. Alright. So now, basically last class we went over print statements and input statements. So for print, it's the syntax. All you type print is case sensitive. So print this is different than like capital P or things like that, or all caps lock print is different. So basically you want to write print and then parentheses, and then you just you can print whatever you want. So cat, and then you run it and it will print cat. But input, so what I call this area, I call it the like where you're doing all your coding, and then here is the command prompt. That's where you get all your output and things like that. But what the input statement allows you to do is allows you to enter directly into this area. So like if you want to enter my name, and so it'll still print cat because I still have this up here, but then now I can input my name, and then I can put in Rohith or something like that. And that's what input allows you to do, and Yutin taught that last class. So these are the two basic ones that we learned. It's really simple. All you have to do is just type in print or type in input, and then make sure you put those parentheses, your beginning parentheses and your ending parentheses, and then your quotation marks are important as well. Oops. Yeah, your quotation marks are important as well. You can't just have if you have like only one quotation, it could mess it up. It doesn't know, it'll have a syntax error. So you have to make sure that you put in both quotations or something like that. And yeah, so those are the two simple ones. Today we're going to be going into variables and data types. So first, variable. So what is a variable? It's really simple. It's just a name for a spot in the computer's memory. So basically, a variable can be, simply just name. And how do we assign a variable? With just an equal sign, one equal sign. So name equals Rohith. All right. So the thing is, this variable name here, it doesn't matter what you call it. A lot of people get confused. they'll look at it and be like, so since this person named it name, I have to write a name here. No, that's not true. Even though I named it name, I can, write 9. It doesn't matter what you like label it, but it's just for your purpose, to make it easier for yourself. So if I label it name, I'm gonna obviously want to write a name there. And then when I want to print it, I don't have to write print Rohith. I can just directly write just print name. And what Python will do is it'll go to, okay, what is name? Name is Rohith, so I'm gonna print name. And there you go, it prints Rohith. So that's basically how variables work. And yeah, so if like I can even name this number, but make sure you also name it number down here, and it'll still, just because I named a number, it's not gonna, the value is not gonna change to like 9 or 7. We gave the value Rohith, so it's gonna still run Rohith. All right, so it's really simple. It's yeah, and there are a couple rules though. So for variables, so let's change it back to name, just for easier purposes. If What do you guys think would happen if, so I do name is Rohith, and then I do again below here, name is Sid. So, and then if I want to print name, write in the chat, do you think it will print Rohith and Sid? Do you think it'll print Rohith? Do you think it'll print Sid? What do you think is gonna happen? Just take a second, just, write in the chat. So there's syntax error, that's a good guess. What else do you guys think? Syntax error. All right. I think it will print Sid. So let's just see what happens. Run. Yes, it does print Sid. And why is that? It's this bullet point right here. The variable's value can change while the program runs. So basically, at first, the name is Rohith. Then at line 2, the name changes to Sid. The variable name becomes Sid. And then when I want to print name, it completely forgets about Rohith because now we assigned it Sid and it prints Sid. So it's basically in the order you do it. If I do Sid up here and then I do Rohith down here and I print name, it's going to print Rohith. Exactly. So it's not an error. It does work. So yeah, if you can assign two different, the same variable name to like two different values, but it's just going to only print the last value that you assigned it to. So yeah, that's pretty cool. It's a little bit tricky, but yeah, yeah. All right, so different types of data take up different amounts of space in memory. So that is also true. There are more data types that we will learn as we go. So I'll come back to this as we go. So yep. And then the name of the variable does not affect its value. That's the most important one that I was just talking to you guys about. So just because I changed this name to, number, let's just take this out now since we learned it. So just because I change it to number, it doesn't change the value to like 6 or something, So just the variable name does not really affect what you can put whatever you want here. I can name this, Clifford, and I can still call it Sid. And then when I want to print Clifford, it'll still print Sid. So yeah, the name of the variable does not change anything. Yep. So does everyone get that? Any questions? You guys, if everyone understands and want to move on, you can just write in yeah. If you have any questions or you want any help on your Replit, then yep. All right. So looks good. Let's continue. All right, next one. So there are a couple of naming rules for variables though. So every single time you name a variable, it has to start with a letter, upper or lowercase, or an underscore. So let's go back to this. So Clifford, it starts with a letter, so that's why there's no errors. And you can even start it with a underscore, like that. Underscore Clifford, and then if you want to print, make sure you change it below here too, print underscore Clifford. Also, if you guys are doing like a different name, don't worry about it. You can do like an underscore, name. Like, let me change it back to that actually. So underscore name, and then underscore name, and then run. It'll still print Sid. But the thing is, you cannot start it with something like a number. You can't do like name. You can't do like 9 AME, like that. And then if you want to print it, it's going to give you an error, syntax error. It's invalid syntax. Syntax is just, a fancy way for like grammar. Like Python itself is a language, so there is grammar, and that is incorrect grammar. You can't start a variable with a number. That's just a rule that Python gives you. So yeah, but you can start it with, letters or underscore. So let's just go back to name. It's just the simplest way, and let's change it back to name too. And then it can be of any length. So yeah, there is no limit. You can do like name, blah 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 blah. But then at the end of the day, you want to make sure that when you're printing it, you put the exact same. Like even one letter is gonna change it. So like if I were to accidentally forget this n over here, oops, yeah, this n right there. If I just delete and then I run, it's gonna say name error, and these two are different names, so they're kind of confused. So then I have to go back, put that n. So that's why you want to make it, a short variable. You don't want to do a long variable on purpose, but Python does allow you to you can do a long variable if you want. So now since I got the name correct, it works perfectly. So yeah, there's no length to a variable. You can do as long as you want, and yep. So all characters after the first in the variable name can be letters, numbers, or underscores, but no spaces or punctuation, except the underscore, are allowed. So basically, let's say we go back to name. So let's change that back to name, and let's change this back to name as well. So here we can have numbers inside of it. So just like I said, you can't start it with a number, but you can have, like, instead of A for name, let's put like a 0. So it does work now though. You can have a number inside. So now if you want, it'll still print SID. So yeah, it works, but you just can't start it with it. But punctuation though, you can't, regardless, you can never have punctuation in a variable. So you can't start it with it, you can't have it. So like if I were to put a period in name, na.me, you can see that squiggly line. It's just not going to work. So na.me, run, it's going to have a name error. And basically that period is like separating the names. It's saying name na is not defined. It's getting kind of confused. It's like, is this the variable? Is this the variable? What is this period doing here? Yeah, it's just getting a little confused. So yeah, you just always want to either have letters in it, you can have numbers in it, but you can't just start with it. So like if I like a good variable with numbers would be something like the month 03 or something like that. So that's basically saying that the variable is what is the third month? January, February, March. So I want to put that as March, the month 03. And then if I want to print the month 03, then it would work perfectly with March. So that's why some people want numbers in it. You just can't start with it, so your variable can't just be 03, So it's gonna give you a syntax error. You can't have numbers as the beginning, but you can have it like later in the end. So yeah, if I were to just run this, it'll give you an error. You can't start it with 03. And yeah, so it's pretty simple. Variables, just make sure you don't start it with numbers, or make sure you don't have punctuation in it. But other than that, it's pretty simple. All right. Okay. So you can't have any punctuation in the name whatsoever. Yes. You can have the punctuation in the name, like so if this was name and this was name. So yeah, you can't have punctuation like in here, or like you can't have like a slash or something. It's just gonna mess it up. But like it doesn't change what you can do here. I can put a sid dot here. You can put a sid dot pasula, our last names, and if I run it, it'll still run it right. But you just can't have like a dot here, or like in your variable name. So yeah. Okay, so let's continue. So yeah, and obviously variable names are case sensitive. So num is different than num with the lowercase. So yeah, name is different than if I want to print name with an uppercase, it's going to give me an error. It's going to be like, what is that? Error name, this uppercase name is not defined. It's confused. It's like, I've never seen this before. So yeah, Python looks at uppercase and lowercase differently, like totally different words. So you want to make sure that you put the same exact cases. So yeah, that's it for variables. All right, let's do a quick example. I'll walk you through it. So first, we want to write a program that asks for the user's name. So what do we learn? That basically you can input things into this area. It asks for the username and you can write it in here. And that's basically the input function. So we want to use the input function. So input, and what does it want it to do? It wants to, so let's go step by step. So we'll first do this one. Write a program that asks for the user's name. So input, and then, we can put enter the name. We can put that in there, and that's basically all we have to do. And if we run it, let me get this out of the way. Yeah, if we run it, it says enter the name, and then we can enter Rohith, and that's the first step. That's all we had to do for the first step. Write a program that asks for the user's name, and we wrote input, and it asks for the user's name. It's asking you to enter the name, and we just enter it in. So that's the first step in it. Now they want you to store it in a variable. So all we have to do is just right before it, just put it into a variable. Let's say we want to name the variable name. Name equals this, like this entire function. So this equal sign is called like the assignment assignment, like not a variable, but assignment like tool. You can use it to basically assign a variable to its expression. So the variable in this case is name, and you're assigning it to this entire thing. And now the last step is you want to give a greeting. So basically, simply just printing name will do the same exact, enter the name, and then you write in Rohith and enter, and it'll just return Rohith. But you want to also give a greeting. You want it to be hello Rohith. So let me just make sure there's no questions. In this class, will we learn about the multiply function? I will be going over in this class just a couple of, mathematical functions, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division. But yeah, that will come in a couple more slides. But yeah, that's it. So, yeah. So let's go back to it. So right now, if we print name, we get that, but we want a greeting as well. We want it to say hello Rohith. So how do we do that? You have to taught about it in last class. It's basically string concatenation. It's a big word, but you're basically just adding two words together. So we want to add the word hello to the variable name. So now what would this print? It's going to print hello, and then it's going to print the name that we enter. So it's going to say hello Rohith. But what's the error here? There's no error, but what's like what's something that we want to avoid? Well, when I run it, and when I run Rohith, the thing is I didn't put any space. So if I do it, it's just going to do hello Rohith with no spaces. So how do we put a space? Well, there's multiple ways, but the simplest way is just put a space right there. But some people like to be fancy, and they do things like a comma. A comma in Python also adds spaces. So you could do it like that. But the best way and the simplest way for you guys is you guys can just put a space right there. And it's really easy. And then now when we run it, enter the name, Rohith, hello Rohith. And that's exactly what we wanted to do. It's really simple. It's just two lines. You're assigning the variable name to this input function, and then you can write Rohith into this command prompt, and then it will print hello Rohith. So it's really simple. It's really fun. It's, yep. Yeah. All right. So now that was just variables. It was really simple. Variables is just, a name for a spot in the computer's memory, and there's a lot of things to do with variables. There are naming rules. You don't want to do numbers. You don't want to put punctuation. But yeah, other than that, it's really simple. Now we're gonna go into. I just skipped this slide. This slide was basically the answer that we just did. Name is the variable. There's the input function that we created, and then there's the print statement that we did afterwards. So there you go. Now, so data types. There are a lot of data types in Python, but these are the four basic ones. These are the ones that we're going to focus the most on, at least today. So the first data type is string. Strings is just text. Text is a data type in Python, and the name is str, but that's basically short for strings. Oops. So there are two things that I will just go quickly over. It's really simple. It's string concatenation and string multiplication. It's really simple. So let's go straight into it. So let me erase all this. So basically, strings is, so let's assign a variable. Let's do animal equals dog. So what data type is this variable? Well, we look at the value that we assign to it, and we assign the value dog to it. And dog is just text. So here's one way that Python allows you to tell the type, the data type of something. So you want to print the type, you type in type, and then whatever you want to do, animal. So you're basically looking for the type of animal, the data type of animal. And basically what it's going to print is the class is stir. And what is stir? It's just the name for the text data type string. It's just a short way to say string. So dog, well, so what does this do? It goes to animal. What is animal? It goes here and it says animal is dog. So you don't have to do all this. You can just directly just type in type of dog. You know, you don't have to do all that animal and that, but that was just to show you. You can also look at the type of variables. But yeah, print type of dog, it's still going to give you string. It's still a string. It's just text. That's all that string is. It's just text. It's just words together. It could be blah, 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 run. String. So now here's a little tricky thing about strings though. I'm going to ask you guys in the chat, what do you guys think this will give you? So this is 9. That's all I typed in. Would this print string? Will this print another data type is integer? So what do you guys think? Will this be an integer or would this be a string? You can write it in the chat. What do you think would happen if I just put run? All right, a couple think that it will print int. There's a couple that think string, int. So yeah, couple they're confused between int or string. So the thing is, the main difference, so what do you guys see the difference between that one over there and here? What is the main difference you guys see? There's one main difference between these two lines over here, print type of 9 and print type of 9. What is the main difference? Quotes, exactly. There are parentheses on both of them. There's parentheses right here, parentheses here. So the quotes actually changes the data type. Over here, it's going to be a string. Anything in quotes, even if it's a number, it's going to be a string. But as soon as you take out the quotes, then it will be an int. So if I were to run this, the first one is a string right here. If it's in quotation marks, even though it's a number, Python looks at the quotation marks and they're like, okay, there's quotation marks. Someone's writing text. As soon as you write a quotation mark, they're like, okay, this is text. They don't care what's in it. They don't care if it's numbers. They don't care if it's anything. It's going to be a string. And then when you take out the quotation marks, it's an integer, int. There you go. So yeah, quotation marks basically make it a string. And let me make sure, any questions? Nope. If you have any questions, just put them in the chat. I'll get to them as soon as possible. And yeah, so let's go back to strings. So we went over these two. Oops. We're going to go into string concatenation, which Yetun taught about last class a little bit, but I'll just teach you a little bit more, and then string multiplication. So string concatenation, it's really simple. So let's say we want to do, we want to add the words cat and dog. So animal number 1, we're going to name it cat. Animal number 2, we're going to name it dog. Okay, and now, so the quotation marks make it a string, so these are strings, and it's obvious that they're strings because it's just text. This is just words, letters, combined together, yeah. So now we want to add these two together, and what you have to do is just as simple as just adding like 9 plus 9. You're just adding animal 1 plus animal 2. And you want to print this, so make sure you put the print before it and then the parentheses around it because you want to print it. So what is it going to print? It's going to print cat plus dog. But since we didn't include any spaces, it's just going to do cat dog as in one word. So let's say we run this. There you go, cat dog. And that's just string concatenation. You're just adding words together. And you can't, it's weird when you think about it. You're like, how can you add words? You know, like adding is just for like numbers, but Python allows you to do that. But when you think about it, it's pretty simple. All you're doing is just cat plus dog. You're just adding it to the end of the word. And if you change this animal 2 plus animal 1. Now what is it? Now we're doing dog. Animal 2 is dog first, and then we're adding cat to the second. So it's not gonna be cat dog. It's gonna be dog cat. So yeah, order does matter if you want it in a certain way. Like obviously 9 plus 4 and 4 plus 9 is still gonna give you 13 in math, but at least in Python when you're adding words, it's gonna obviously be different. Cat dog, dog cat, and things like that. Yeah. So that's string concatenation. And now string multiplication is basically the same thing, but you're just basically repeating a word. So if I want to print animal 1, but I want cat to be repeated 4 times. So you're going to do animal 1 times, and times in Python is not like the X or something. It's this little star symbol. And if you want to find it in your laptop, it's right above the 8. And so you're gonna have to press shift and you're gonna have to click the number 8. So that's the time symbol in Python. So animal 1 times 4. And what is that gonna do? It's gonna do cat times 4. So it's gonna do cat 4 times. That's basically string multiplication. You're just multiplying the word 4 times. And there you go. Cat. So yeah, that's all string multiplication is. You're just multiplying it. If I change this to 10, it's going to be very long, but cat. And if you count it, if you take the time, that is 10 times. And yeah, that is string multiplication. It's really simple. It's easy to use. You just use the multiplication sign. Make sure you know where you can find it. It's above the 8. Click shift, and then you get the 8. Yeah, just making sure you guys don't have any questions. And yeah, that's strings. It's just words. That's all strings are. All right, now integers and floats. So we went over string, and here was an example. Hello world is a string. And then now we're going over integers and floats. So int, or short for integer, is a whole number, positive or negative, without decimal places. And then float is a floating point number. And that basically means that you have a decimal point in it. So for example, so let's take this out. So integer is 9. So now if I want to do print the type of integer, let's change this to number because it doesn't matter what you write it. So what is the type of number? Is it an integer? Is it a float? Well, what is 9? 9 is just a whole number. There's no decimal point. There's nothing. So if you run it, it will give you int. But there's one tricky thing about integers and floats. What do you guys think would happen if I do this? So 9.0, it's still a whole number. Do you think the decimal point will cause it to be a float? Do you think it will still remain an int because it's still a whole number? Write what you think in the chat. Do you think it would be an int or a float? And yeah, just take the time, take a couple seconds. Just what's the first thing that pops into your head when you see it? Number equals 9.0. Do you think that 0.0 is going to change it from being an int to a float? Or do you think Python will look at that and be like, that doesn't matter. It's still a 9. It's fine. Just write what you guys think in the chat real quick. Ooh, I didn't see that. So float. So yeah, you guys are all correct. It is float. Every single one of you got it right. Yeah, so that they look at that decimal point and they think that it's a decimal. That's all they care about. They don't care if it's a whole number. They don't care if it's even if 0 would be still an int. Oops. Still 0 would still be an int, but as soon as you put 0.0, even though it's the exact same thing, they're going to look at it and be like, it's a float. So let's go back to the 9.0. 9.0, it's a float. And then as soon as you take out that 0.0, again, it's an int. So it's kind of weird. They're both the exact same number, but Python looks at it and they think it's two separate, totally different data types. So yeah, that decimal point does matter. If your like teacher asks you, hey guys, do this multiplication problem, but at the end, make sure that your answer is a decimal. So even if your answer was 9, all you have to do is like 9.0, and Python will look at it and be like, oh, that's a float. That's all they care about. So going back into integers and floats, we're gonna learn quickly some simple mathematics that Python uses. So there's obviously the four basic ones: addition, subtraction, division, multiplication, and we went over most of them. Addition, you just have to use a plus sign. So if I were to do, so let's label this let's label this sum, and we want to do 9 plus 9, and then we want to print sum. So what would that print? It's just simple addition. It will just print 18. So if we want to do 9 minus 9, so this variable doesn't matter. You can still keep its sum, and it's not going to change anything. But just for like our purposes, it's not sum anymore. You're not like adding. So subtraction, subtraction. So subtraction, 9 minus 9, that's just simple subtracting, that's just 0. So those are the two simple ones. And then there's division. Division, Python uses the slash. Make sure you use this type of slash, not the other slash. There's two slashes. I think this is the backward slash. I kind of get confused between backward and forward slash. I'm pretty sure that's the backward slash. So yeah, just make sure you look for this exact slash in your keyboard, not the other one. There's two of them. They face different directions. So yeah, make sure you use that one, and let's put that in here. So if I want to do like, so let's do, now we're doing division, print division. So 9 divided by 3. And now if you want to print division, it's basically going back to that variable, and it's looking at 9 divided by 3, and it's going to print whatever that answer is. And when we run it, it will print. So yeah, that is one thing though. When we do division, even though we're just doing 9 divided by 3, it's going to give you 3.0. It's not going to give you just 3. Division, your answer will be a float. So when we were doing addition, 9 plus 9, it just gave you 18. It didn't give you 18.0. But for division, even though we did 9 divided by 3, the answer is just 3, right? But for Python, when you do any type of division, it will give you 3.0. And that's just something to know. Yeah. And so multiplication is, we talked about, it's just that little star thing. You find it above the 8. And yeah, so if I want to do 9 times 3, that will, I'll just change this to, no, just to make it simple, I'm just going to change it to math, so we don't have to change it all the time. So math, so 9 times 3 will give you 27. Now, see, it's not 27.0, it's only for division that happens. So like if we were to do like 8 divided by 2, it will give you 4.0. If we were to do, even though why isn't it giving us just 4 like it's doing for math and subtraction and addition? That's just how Python is. For division, it's going to always give you a decimal, because they think like division is, so because like you could do like 9 divided by 2, and it will give you a decimal to 4.5. So that's pretty cool. Let me just make sure. Does the variable matter based on the, no, it does not. So yeah, that's, the variable does not matter. That's why I changed it to math. Just I was just changing it just because you guys might get confused. I'm doing like, I put addition here, but then I'm doing like division here. You're looking like, why did you label it addition? That's why I just changed it to math, since that's what we're doing. But it would work for anything. Like if I even do cal here, cal equals 9 divided by 2, and then print cal, it will still give me 4.5. The variable does not matter at all. So yeah, let's change it back to math. You just want to make it just what you're comfortable with. So since we're doing math, I just changed it to math. That's it. All right. So yeah, and then there's these two ones that look confusing. They're like, what is floor division? What is modulo? But it's really simple as soon as I explain it to you. Floor division is basically just division, but it will round to the lowest whole number. So 9 divided by 2 gives you 4.5. As soon as I put another division sign, that changes to floor division. And think about it as floor and ceiling. So you're doing division, you go to 4.5, but then floor division, you're going to the floor, you're going lower to the nearest whole number. So you're going, what's the nearest whole number? Lowest whole number. 4.5 is 4. It's going to go to the lower one. So, and then you print math, and then it's 4. And now notice that it doesn't say 4.0. So when we're doing simple division, it gives you decimals, even if we're doing whole numbers, like 9 divided by 3 is 3.0. But what if we did 9 divided by 3 with floor division? It's still 9 divided by 3. There's no like rounding needed. You're still going to go straight to 3, and it's 3 still a whole number, but is it going to be 3.0, or is it going to just be 3? And what happens is it's just 3. So that's the cool thing about floor division. The answer will be an integer. And that's pretty nice because sometimes you just want integers. You don't want all those decimals, and yeah, especially if you're doing something like 9 divided by like 45. You know, that's going to be a long decimal. So you could do, they'll give you, oh, that is not a long decimal. Never mind. 46. So yeah, there's like a long decimal. So if you want the decimal form, you can do that. But if you wanted to just go to like, 9 divided by 46, well, so the thing about this is it's going to give you 0. Because what is 9 divided by 46 normally? It's just 0 point blah, 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 blah. But what's the nearest lowest whole number? You go down. So that is right now between 0 and 1. It's going to go to 0. So that's just floor division. It'll go to the lowest whole number. So there you go. Let me make sure there's no questions. Alright. Okay. So yeah, that is floor division. It's just like division, but it just goes to the lowest whole number. That's all it is. And then now modulo. You guys are looking at this and probably like, what is that? It's really simple. It's just, so I don't know why they use a percentage sign. It's just why Python uses it. But basically all it is remainder. That's all it is. It's just, what is the remainder of this and this? So for example, if I were to do 9 divided by 2, 9 divided by 2, but now we're not doing 9 divided by 2, we're doing 9 modulo 2. And that's basically saying, okay, guys, do 9 divided by 2. What is that? That is 4, and then you'll have a remainder of 1. Yeah. So what would this answer give you? It's going to give you the remainder. That's all it does. Modulo, or short term, we like to call it mod. 9 mod 2. So all it does is just says 9 divided by 2. That is 4 with a remainder of 1. So your answer is 1. It just goes into it and finds the remainder. That's all it does. So if I want to change this to, let's do 15 or 25 divided by 6. So what is that? That's 4. And then again, that's the remainder of 1. So let's try to get a different remainder. Let's do like 9. So 25 divided by 9. 9 goes into 25 2 times. That's 18. And then there's a remainder of 7. So what is it going to print out? It doesn't care about the 18. It doesn't care about the fact that 9 goes into it 2 times. All it cares about is the remainder. So after 9 goes into it 2 times, the remainder is 7. So it's just going to print out 7. So, yep, that's all it is. Those are the main math things that we're going to be doing in Python. These two are a little bit confusing, but this is all it is. It's just remainder. So let me just put that. That's just remainder. And this is just simple division, but with rounding to lowest whole number. So yeah, that's all it is. And then these are just simple math. Make sure any questions. You said that floor division is division rounded to the lowest whole number. Is there an opposite version? Not that I know. I mean, I never looked for it, but I'm sure there is. There are many functions in Python. That's the fun thing about Python. If I'm ever like looking for something specific, all I gotta do is just search it up and just like look up. Is there a? So you know what? How about we look it up? Opposite of floor division, Python. That's all we gotta do. And there is something called the ceil function, like ceiling, exactly, which is the opposite of floor. So how do we use that? Let's look it up. It's, you don't have, so I found out about this operator. That's just floor division. We just learned that. Now let's see what the ceil. There is, let's see. It looks really confusing looking at all this, but I'm sure there's like simpler ways and more easier ways to do it. So what is the opposite of floor value? The ceil method. Okay. So we don't have, there are different functions, but as for you guys right now, just think about floor division. We can go more into that like in a different class, but yes, there is. But yeah, what is that? So if you guys do want to do it, it's just print, let's see, let's try to do it. I've never used it before. So ceil, I think I might be spelling it right or wrong. Ceil, yeah. And then what if I think, is it like maybe 32 divided by 4? Is that how that works? I don't know if I'm getting it wrong. Yeah, I'm not doing it right. It's not defined. So there's something wrong that I'm doing with it. I'll look into it more and then I'll tell you guys next class. But there, all you have to do is just search it up. It's really fun. That's why Python, it's kind of like a puzzle, you know. You're just looking for things. You're like, okay, now where there's four division. So is there the opposite? You can just look it up and it's really fun to use. The thing is, not no coder knows every single thing in the entire world. They're gonna obviously have to look up methods. There's like millions of methods in the world and things like that. So yeah. All right. So that's the simple math one. So let's go back to the data types. We went over string, we went over integer, we went over float, and now we're going into Booleans. So Booleans is kind of weird. Um, you might look at it and be like, what is a Boolean? Why is it called a Boolean? I looked at it the same. I don't know why they call it a Boolean, but Booleans is basically just statements that are either true or false. It could be mathematical statements, and it could really be just like any type of statement. I'll give you examples in a second, and it's basically used to represent the truth value of an expression. So let me just make sure there's no more question. So yeah, so let's look into Booleans real quick. So now Booleans. Let's do print 75 is equal to. So why did I do two equal sign? Well, because one equal sign, Python only looks at it as an assignment tool. So that's why we do name equals roweth, and there we use one equal sign. Now what do we want if we just want one equal sign? Then you basically have to do a double equal sign. So here, if I were to just do 75 equals 75, it's going to say syntax error. Expression cannot contain assignment. Perhaps you mean double equal sign, and yes, we do. So basically, Python, if you want to do it like an actual mathematical equal sign, you're gonna have to do two. And what is this gonna print you? It's not gonna print you a number. You're just doing 75 is equal to 75. What is it gonna do? It's gonna say, is this statement true or is it false? And it's true. So all it's gonna do is true. And this right here is a Boolean. This is also a Boolean. So if I want to do the print the type of 75 is equal to 75, it's going to run and it's going to say bool, and which is short for Boolean. So that's all Boolean is. It's just an expression, and you can see if it's true or if it's false. So let's do like some other types of Booleans. Let's just do it underneath print 62 is greater than 85. See, that is false. So what is it going to do? You're going to run it, and there you go, false. And it's really cool. Booleans, it just tells if it's true or if it's false, and that's what Python makes it do. There are two things within Booleans, though. There are, here, I'll put it down here just in case. There are AND statements and OR statements. And basically what that is let's say I do 62 greater than 85. Let's do 5 is greater than 3, and 2 is greater than 1. So Python goes through this and it says 5 is greater than 3. Yep, that's right. And 2 is greater than 1. Yep, that's right. So this entire statement is true. Run it. So, and now it says true. But if this one's changed right here and I put that 0. So 5 is greater than 3. Yep, that's right. And 0 is greater than 1. Well, that's not true. So that basically means this entire statement is false. Even though this portion right here is true, for this entire statement to be true, both of them have to be true. And that's what an AND statement is. An AND statement, both sides must be true for the entire statement to be true. That's how it works. So since this statement right here is not true, when we run it, it's going to say false. Now what is an OR statement? That's the exact opposite. Basically, only one of them have to be true. And you can think about it. You can just look at it and be like, okay, what is and OR? If you think about it like in just grammar, and means both, and then OR means like one of them. So and both of them have to be true. If I change this to OR, so 5 is greater than 3 is true, or 0 is greater than 1 is true. Since one of them is true, this whole statement is true. Now when you run it, it becomes true. Even though this one right here is false, that or statement over here makes this entire statement true because one of them is true. But then if I change this one over here to false as well, so if I do 3 is greater than 5 or 0 is greater than 1, both of them are false. 0 is not greater than 1 and 3 is not greater than 5, so it's going to say false. So or means one of them have to be true for the entire statement to be true, and both of them have to be true for the entire statement to be true. And that's basically what Booleans are. So or statements, one side of the statement must be true for the entire statement to be true. That is what or statements are. So there's or and there's and statements in Booleans. And those are basically the 4 basic data types. So in strings, we learn just what strings are, just text, and then we learn 2 specific things within strings. There's string concatenation and string multiplication. And then for integers and floats, we just learn the difference between them. Even though 3.0 is still a whole number, it's the decimal point causes it to be a float just because it has a decimal portion. And then we learned about some math operations. We learned addition, subtraction, division, multiplication, floor division, and modulo or mod, which is just remainder. And then lastly, we just learned Booleans, and Booleans are either true or false statements, and it could be mathematical statements. There are other statements too. I'll just go right back into that. But yeah, we just learned mathematical statements, and then it's used to represent the truth value of an expression. And there are 2 types of statements. There's and there's or, and we just went through both of them right now. And yeah, that's basically Booleans. And let me just make sure there's no questions. Oh, it's named after George Boole, mathematician whose systems are used. Oh, I did not know that. That's pretty cool. Thank you. Yep. And yeah, so Booleans aren't only used for mathematical. You can also use it for like things like looking if certain letters are in a word. So you can say print a in. In is a function or a tool that Python gives, and it's basically checking if it's in something. So a is in Rohit. So is there an a in Rohit? No, there's not. So what it's going to do, it's going to print false. Exactly. So Booleans aren't only for mathematical. It could be for like just regular statements as well, for in statements. So now if I want to change this to like change the O to an A, Rohit, a in Rohit, it would be true. It looks through this word and it sees that there's an A in it, and they're like, wow, okay, that's true. And yeah, so you can also do like, if you want to do multiple letters, you can't just put like AT in Rohit because there is an A and there's a T. But when you do it like this, Python thinks that you want A and T to be together. So when you run it, it's going to say false. But what would say true is AH. AH are right next to each other in the word, so it's going to say true. So when you when you're looking to see if something's in a word, if you put multiple letters together, they have to be chained in that exact same way in that word as well. So AH and I, it will also be true if I do true. Yep. And then but then as soon as I put like R here, if I put the R in the beginning, make sure it's capital. If I put the R in the beginning, then it would be true. But since I put it at the end, it's false. If I take this out and I put the R in the beginning, now is RAHI in RAHIT? Yes, it is. It's the 4 exact letters in the same exact chain. Ooh, oops, hold on. Ooh, am I doing something wrong? Not. Ooh. Hold on. I don't know what's going on. 1 second, guys. Let me just. Is it? If I run this. Yeah, I'm running. Shoot. Let me just refresh this. Reload. Sorry about that. I think it might have just made a little error. 1 second. Ooh, I think it's crashing. It's not. Alright, let me just make a new one. Don't know what happened there. Python, create new. It's okay. Let's just leave that. Don't know what happened. So here, just making a new one. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. Let's just go right back into it. Alright, so let's just go back to where we were. So print rahi in rahit. So now if you want to run that. Shoot, am I? Oh, yeah, there you go. True. There you go. So it's true. If I were to take that R, like I was telling you guys, and put it at the end, then it's going to change it to false. And there you go. So order does matter for strings. You do want to put in the exact same order that you're looking for it in the word. And yeah, so that's basically today's class. We basically learned variables today. We learned variables, the way to name variables. Make sure that you don't put punctuation or spaces when you're naming variables. Make sure you don't start variables with a number. You only want to start it with a letter or an underscore. And variable names are case sensitive. So if you name the variable num, short for number, with a capital N, and then when you're trying to print it and you put a lowercase n, it's going to get confused. It's going to be like, huh, what is this? What is that? So that's one thing. And then we did a quick exercise on it. And then we learned the 4 basic data types that Python will give us: strings, integers, floats, booleans. So strings is the text. We learned about concatenation, multiplication. We learned about integers and floats. Integers are just whole numbers, positive or negative. And then floats are just decimal numbers. They have a decimal point in them. And then we learned about 6 different mathematical operations: addition, subtraction, division, multiplication, floor division, which is just rounding to the lowest whole number, and then mod or modulo, which is just a remainder. And then we learned about Booleans. They're just statements that are either true or false. It could be mathematical statements, and we also looked at statements that aren't just mathematical. It's just, just like really just logical statements. You can, is this in this? Is that in this? Things like that. Used to represent the truth of an expression. And then we learned about and statements and or statements. And yeah, that was today's class. So I'm just going to leave it on this last exercise. And let's actually end it together with this. Let's do this together on your Replit as well. So basically, we're trying to write a program that accepts a whole number as input and then prints the product. So basically, product, let's do product of that whole number and 5. So basically, what it's saying is if that whole number was 9, then the answer should be 45. If it was 6, 6 times 5 is 30. So basically, so let's do it. Let's do it together. So again, what is something that allows you to directly put an input? That's the input function. So input, and then let's just type in enter a number. And now if we were to run that, that's the first step. Enter a number, 9. And now we got the first step. We got to like just entering a whole number. Let me make sure you guys have any. Is there a way where you can check the number of A's or any other specific letter in a function? There is. There are different types of tools that you can use to check if like something isn't something. There's also different data types, but we'll go more into detail through in more classes. So yeah, I don't want to like confuse other people, but there is a way to check if there's like certain number of. We're gonna go more into like length. Length is to check the length of an entire word. So like for example, roweth has 5 letters. If you want to see the length of roweth, it's just a function and it'll give you the number 5. So that's all that is. We'll go more into that like in future classes, but yeah, for right now you guys don't have to worry about that. But yeah, there is a lot more to do with it too. So let's go back to the question. Write a program that accepts a whole number as input and then prints the product of that whole number and 5. So now we got the first part. So let's assign this to a variable. I'm going to assign it to num. Num is equal to this entire thing. Now we want to print num times, well, what is it? 5. So now when we do it, it'll work perfectly. So if we do 9, well, will it work perfectly or will it not? What do you guys think in the chat? Do you guys think it will? Write yes or write no if you think this will work or you think this will give an error. What do you guys think? Just take a quick second. If you think this is going to work, fine. Num equals input, enter a number. We got the first part down as soon as we do num times 5. So yes, 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 yes. Okay, so there's a little trick to this though. Now let's see what's going to happen. So, oops, stop it. So let's run it. So enter number 9. As soon as I click enter, let's see if it works. 9. Is that what we wanted though? Do we want 9 5 times repeated, or do we want 9 times 5, which is 45? Right? So it didn't work as we wanted. It didn't give an error, but it didn't work as we wanted it to. Why is that? Because Python is looking at this num and it thinks that it's a string. It thinks that this 9 over here is a string because the input function, it's always going to be a string. Whatever you enter here is going to be a string. Even if it's a number, it's going to be a string. So how do we change that string to an integer? Down here, we're going to do num is equal to int of num. And this is basically a Python word that's called casting. You're trying to change the data type of this num. This num right now is a string. It's the word. It's the word 9. But yeah. But now we're trying to change that into the integer 9. And now when we run it, enter number 9, 45. So let's go through the lines. The first line, num, you're inputting a number. But when you're inputting this number, you're inputting the text 9. You're not inputting the number 9. It's just a text. So when you run it, right now we're inputting just a text. That's just text. It's just 9, but it's not the integer 9. And now the second line, we're changing that num into the integer itself 9. It's going to become 9 as the integer. And now when we print num times 5, it's going to do the integer 9 times 5. And now when we run it, oops, over here I had to press enter, 45. And that's basically what we wanted. So yeah, it did work. A lot of you guys said yes, and it did. There was no error, but it didn't give the product that we wanted it to. We wanted 45. They gave 9, 9, 9, 9. And why did it do that? That's string concatenation. That's string multiplication. We just learned that. We learned that with cat. If you did cat times 4, it did cat, 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 cat. So now it did 9 times 5. It did 9, 9, 9, 9, 9, 9 5 times because it thought 9 was the text. And yeah, that's basically it. So we learned today's class, data types and variables. If you guys have any questions, just stay behind, but there's nothing left for today's class, so it ends now. If you have any questions, I'm free. As soon as the class is over, you can unmute your mic and just ask. Yeah, that's it. Do we have any homework? Well, for when we do next class next week, I'm just gonna start with review. So there's not really exactly homework that I want to give you. I just want you to just play around with Replit, practice these things that I taught you, variables and things like that. But homework wise, before I start any class, I'm gonna do like 5 or 6 problems of review. Starting from next class, since I didn't do last class, I didn't do much review today. But starting from next class, I'm gonna do like 5 or 6 questions, and it's basically gonna be you guys answering it. So I'm not gonna like really help that much. Like I'll just go over it after you guys. I'm gonna ask for the answer in the chat, and then we'll see, and then we'll go. So just make sure you guys practice so that next time when we do review for the next 5 questions or 6 questions before we get into new content, you guys will know what to do. That's all. So.